Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I am Connor Williams, and I'm joined by a very special guest. It is none other than former Everton captain and Everton's fourth highest Premier League goal scorer, Kevin Campbell. Nice to meet you, first of all, mate. Welcome to the channel. How are you?
Connor, I'm fine, thank you. Nice to meet you and good to be back.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. So I just wanted to pick your brain at sort of your thoughts of Everton so far this season. It's been a bit of an up and down sort of season from the start to now. What are your thoughts on it so far?
Well, my thoughts at the moment are I'm got no problem with the manager. I think the manager, I thought he's bought well. He's brought in key areas that Everton was struggling last year. Really defensively, we're all over the place at times in midfield. Couldn't get it together. That seems to have stabilised. But the biggest problem for the team is the top end of the pitch. That's the biggest problem right now. Obviously, DCL can't keep himself fit right now. Mope's coming. He needs somebody to help him. He needs help, whether it's Demarai Gray, Anthony Gordon, whoever plays in those areas, need more goals, need more firepower. And this is where the manager needs to be backed. And he hasn't really been backed for the top end of the pitch. So I anticipate in January he's going to get some funds to do that.
Yeah, well, we hope so. I think it's glaringly obvious, isn't it, where we're sort of lacking in the tactics department, and it is like you said, it's up front. You did mention a couple of the signings and a couple of players, and I've got a handful of players that I want to get your thoughts on. Um, First of all, I want to get your thoughts on both Cody and Tarkowski. You said that obviously Frank Lampard did improve defensively. I think they're the two main ones, aren't they, along with Idrissa Gueye, we'll get onto in a minute. But how well do you think these two have just gelled and settled at the club?
Well, I think it makes a real difference. One, they've got experience, and two, you could see that they like defending, and that's a big difference. And actually, three, which is the most important, they play every week. That helps, to have that solidity and that continuity, that know-how. You know your mate's going to be beside you every week. Whereas Everton have had so many injuries. You look at all the centre backs previously. All the centre backs have been out injured or lost real bad form. Keane lost a big form. It's really struggled. So to have these guys in there, you could see from the fullbacks now, the fullbacks have been a lot more solid. The fullbacks have been a lot more solid because you've got two centre halves who are happy to be there, happy to play, know the drill. Again, I think it's really good business to get Cody in. It's good. Tarkowski was very good. To get Cody beside him, I think is a really good move as well. Obviously, there's players looking to come back, but the players who are coming back, you're not going to be getting in at the two centre half spots. I could tell you that much. So you might have to dovetail somewhere else because those two look really solid.
Yeah, you mentioned injuries. Obviously, Yerry Mina has got injured again during the middle season. I know they called it pre-season, in Australia, which is devastating for him, but a story that Everton fans know all too well at this point in his career. What about Idrissa Gueye? Because obviously when he joined the club, people were there was that question mark of left a quality player at 33. Is he still a quality player, the pace of the Premier League? How do you think he's settled back in going from France to the Premier League? Because they are different types of leagues with different challenges.
Yeah, I think he knows the Premier League. Obviously, he's a bit older in the tooth, but he still gets about the pitch, still could do a good job. I think now with the five substitutes, you can play him for 65, 70 minutes. And if you need to make a change, then you can bring on someone who's probably going to be more probing and more offensive. But I think he's done all right. Him and Onana seem to have that middle of the pitch sorted out. And I think Onana's been good as well. But again, it's Onana's first season. Idrissa Gueye's just come back. So it's going to take them a little bit of time. But again, everything comes down to top end of the pitch. Because if For all you defend well and you do well in midfield, if you don't put your chances away at the top end of the pitch, you keep opposition in it. And the longer they keep the opposition in it, you run the risk of coming unstuck. And that's what's happened a few times. So, look, it's out of 10, it's probably a 5 out of 10. You know, we can sort that top end of the pitch out, then it's going to the score will start rising.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the top end, and I feel like it'd be absolutely criminal to have you on and not mention the centre forward position at Everton. And normally our top guy, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, obviously he's been struggling recently. Give me your thoughts on him and what, if from your experience, it must feel like for him, the frustration, because when he comes back, he has shown he can. The Crystal Palace game, for example, this season, he's still a very, very good player. It just seems he's just struggling. Give me your thoughts of, past experiences, how he must be feeling and how he can beat this.
Well, he's feeling devastated because he probably thinks to himself, I must have walked under a ladder and drove over a cat, because he's had no luck, the poor lad. He's there, he's thinking, why me? And why can't I just go for a run of games, get myself into it without breaking down? Because he's so young, he shouldn't be breaking down like this. No chance he should be. And I'm sure he's questioning himself. The medical staff are questioning themselves. They rehab him well. He comes back. He looks sharp. Scored a really good goal against Crystal Palace, didn't he? Looked to be back to himself, and then, he breaks down again. So it's going to be so tough for him mentally. But it's one of those things that is part and parcel of being a footballer now. You've got to take the ups with the downs. He's had good years, and now have been a bit difficult for him. So he's got to ride it out, and slowly but surely, maybe not come back too fast. Maybe not come back too far. I know the club are desperate, and that's why the club need to back the manager so they can go out and get players and be part of a rotation. Because you look at a lot of the other teams, the strikers are part of a rotation. So, you can play him and you can rest him. Whereas, Calvert-Lewin comes back and he's thrust into it and he's played back to back to back. No, that's not the way. Got to let him. But, unfortunately, Frank Lampard doesn't have enough bodies.
It's interesting. Obviously, forwards are where we need to be. When we signed Neil Moipai, who, like you said, I think struggles up front without him, on his own. People were a bit suspect because he's not the same build as Calvert-Lewin, and I think it's pretty obvious he's not the same type of player, so we'd have to change our play for him. Do you think it was a little bit of an odd one? And also, out of curiosity, what type of striker do you think suits Everton? And if you have one in mind, you can also say one that you'd ideally want us to go for.
No, I wouldn't say it's an odd one, Neil Maupay. The fact of the matter is, look, he's probably come in and at times thinking, there's times where I want to play two up front. I want to play Maupay, who's good around the box, neat, sharp, and I want to play Calvert-Lewin. So I get the best of both worlds. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't been fit enough really to play both of them, together in a system. So that falls down straight away. Neil Maupay plays up front on his own. You could see, obviously, you can't hit him high. And that's a big problem for Everton, because teams realise and they start putting pressure on. So you've got to knock longer balls. So, the turnover comes. Again, for me, Everton need a big striker. Everton need a big striker. They need someone who could hold the line, lead the line. Look, the one who stands out a mile at the moment is Ivan Toney. I know there's a lot of teams who will be coveting him, but I think Ivan Toney is big enough, strong enough, and I think he's tough enough to lead the line for Everton. And what a front two that would be, whether you're looking at Calvert-Lewin and Ivan Toney. I know it costs big money, but listen, it's Everton we're talking about, aren't we? We're talking about Everton. So, and then you can play Maupay and Toney together. You can get the knockdowns a bit like the way they play Brentford playing Buemo with Tony. He feeds off him, dovetails off him nicely, flick-ons, knockdowns, anything, he can be on it. So it's a little bit of a different way, but I think that striker, Everton needs someone who can be strong up there and get hold of that ball.
Yeah, I agree. Ivan Toney would be, he seems like the perfect sort of guy to go for, and it'd be an absolute dream to get him. Obviously, you mentioned Frank Lampard straight from the off. You said you back him. Give me your thoughts on him as a person and as a manager, because he is still quite young in his career. Just tell me what you think about how he's dealing with it all so far, because it's a tough job to come into.
Yeah, it is a tough job. And look, if you look at what he was brought into last season, I mean, there were many people who were questioning could he actually save Everton? Because the team were on a run away from home that nobody wants, and they struggled at home at times. But for once, we got a manager who gets it. And I know there's a bit of frustration because results haven't been great, etc. But let me tell you something. Time is so important. Giving a manager time. I go back to Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. They were calling for his head. Look what he's done with Arsenal now. Frank Lampard, but Arteta's been backed. Frank Lampard hasn't been backed. Frank Lampard needs to be backed. That's what he needs. Once he gets backed, he's gonna be more than all right. He knows what he needs. He knows, you could see with the players he's brought in that there's been improvement. But again, if you can't score goals, you're going to struggle in this league. Doesn't matter who you are. So that's the next part of the remit, is to sort out the firepower. And if Everton got firepower, Everton will beat a lot of teams in this league.
Well, you mentioned how he did he get it? And I think that's something that fans have, like you said, not used to, because he does seem to get it. His connection with the fans last year, I think it's fair to say, for the early part of the last year, being an Everton fan was tough. It was quite split. It was, I think, hostile is probably the fair word to use for the first half of the year last season. How much of night and day was it seeing the first half of the season up until he comes in, and then the scenes, for example, at Crystal Palace when we stayed up and he's celebrating with the crowd? How much of an effect will that have on not just obviously the fans who seem to like him, but the overall feel for that squad? Because a lot of players looked, I think it's fair to say, done a little bit last season, just with the old negative mood.
Yeah, well, listen, when you're at a club like Everton, sometimes that badge is so heavy, and it's not for everybody. Let me tell you that right now. Not everybody could play for Everton. Looks good from the outside, but being able to carry that badge, because the Evertonians know their football, and the football club has got a history and a half. So to be able to go out there and perform week in, week out, a lot of people found it difficult. The ex-manager didn't help. Let's be honest. Rafa Benitez, he had his detractors from the off. I thought he would be a steady pair of hands. Didn't work out that way, did it? It went from bad to worse under him. And, rightly was sacked at the time. I mean, if it was left any later, then it would have been desperate. But in the end, Frank Lampard came in. I think Frank Lampard learned so much more about management being at Everton for the second half of last season than he did in his old managerial career. Obviously, learning about players, learning different ways how to win. I think that's important. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to the players. Have you got the playing staff to help you do the business? And at the moment, there was talk of takeovers and all that in the summer. Never happened. Everton moved really slow in the transfer market for obvious reasons, because of FFP and all that kind of thing. And they just about made a few signings to help them as is. So now, they need firepower. And Frank Lampard gets it. Frank Lampard knows what he needs. That's the crazy thing. He knows what he needs. Will he get back to get it? That's the big question.
Yeah, well, hopefully he will. But I've got one last question before you go, and I sort of, just because it's very rare we get former pros on, especially one with such a status as yourself with this football club and the fans. And it was when you mentioned obviously about Frank Lampard. Under certain parts, I think sometimes last season players got a little bit of stick as well. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on like, I don't want you to drag anyone out, but do you think sometimes the criticism on the players is fair? Because you mentioned you need to, it's not for everybody, this football club. Do you think some of it is fair on the players last season?
Here's one thing I do know, Connor. When things are going well, the players will get praised. That's one thing I know from being at that football club. If you're doing well, you get praised. If you're doing poorly, you're going to get criticized. That's part and parcel of the job. And wearing that badge, being an Evertonian, means a lot to people. So flack's going to be flying around, and you know what? You have to take it on the chin. You have to take it as a player and roll your sleeves up and say, I'll show you. Because you know what? We've seen the likes of Alex Iwobi. He had stick before. He's probably been Everton's most consistent player this season, or for the last 6-7 months. He's shown his true mettle, and that's what has to happen. And yeah, sometimes players might feel it's not fair. Who said life's fair? Life doesn't have to be fair. The bottom line is you're a footballer for Everton Football Club. It's a proud club. It's a big club, and you pay to perform. That's the key. You pay to perform, and if you're not performing, then flack's going to be flying about. It's that simple. But one thing you do know, for all the flack flying around, the fans will always stay with the team. Even though there's flack flying around, the fans will stay with the team. I mean, I just want to say the scenes the back end of last season with the flares and all that. I mean, I'm gutted because I never saw that, Connor. I've got to be honest. I never got that. I mean, I got fantastic, rapport with the fans and all that. But I could just imagine. I was watching, covering games, and I was just like, whoa, the atmosphere. It puts an extra yard in your stride. So I know there's sometimes flack flies about. Evertonians don't want to be giving players stick. They want to be cheering the team. And you could see with the relief of how Frank Lampard and the team survived at the end of last season, how the fans reacted. It was fantastic. So, the boys just have to get their head down, get focused, and get winning games. Win games, and the Evertonians are happy. Simple, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, on top of what you said about the fans, I think it's fair to say as well, the fans have to hold a bit of praise for keeping us up as well, because like you said, the scenes would have given the players that extra kick to push on. So the fans do deserve to, sort of enjoy that praise.
Connor, I'll tell you this. It opened Frank Lampard's eyes. Let me tell you, it opened his eyes, because no team talk could do what the fans done. No team talk. So just being there makes his team talks easy. Do you know what I mean? And it was a collective. The fans helped, the manager, and that's how he gets it. He gets it. You don't do that sort of stuff if you're not fully committed to the football club as the fans. It was brilliant. It really wasn't. Listen, the fans, they're still special to me anyway. So, I ain't giving them any stick. Stick flies about. But when you're winning, you get the pats on the back. So you've got to take the stick when it comes.
I think that's absolutely fair. That is all my questions for you, Kev. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's an absolute privilege and a pleasure to talk to you. Everton legend, fourth highest top goal scorer. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Connor. And let me know next time when you want me on. If I can make it, I'll be there.
That sounds brilliant. Don't forget, guys, to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and comment down below all your thoughts on the video, and give us your favourite Kevin Campbell moments as well. I look forward